Wednesday morning to you, gardening friends. I've made a few little changes. First thing, I'm actually running on a different camera right now. I'm going to try this out and see if this is better than the old one. But actually, usually when I try a different camera, I end up going back to that one. It's just the old reliable and old adjustable. Anyway, I've changed the lights. I had the light in the exhaust hood was a source, and I realized that a lot of the plants were trying to work their way up to that particular light, which is a good thing. They saw the light and they were trying to get to it. But I've put the light back where it used to be, which is kind of where I'm standing behind the camera right now. There's also, in that particular light fixture, is actually a ceiling fan. So I've turned the fan on to let the air circulate, which should help with the plants. I can't remember exactly why, but I saw somewhere that you really kind of need to have some air circulation too. So I've got that going on, and that's also good for the apartment in general, just to have the air moving. Beyond that, I haven't really transplanted much, but let's get you a report on how some of the individual plants look. Actually, I guess I have done a little bit of transplanting. I have the two pots that I had for the ivy plants, and I put the ivies, I've taken them out of just being in water in a vase, and I put them in soil in a couple of pots like this, one on either end, and we'll see how it holds up. They're actually looking quite healthy still, even a day later. I did this yesterday on Tuesday, and here it is Wednesday, and they're still holding up. These plants may be pretty much bulletproof. They didn't seem to generate much for roots when I had them in the water. We'll see though if they get any bigger while they're sitting in the soil. Here we have the original light versus dark experiment. The one that was germinated in the light is on the left, and the one that was germinated in the dark is on the right. And you can kind of see the one that was germinated in light looks a lot healthier and now is actually taller, or at least a little bit beefier than the one in the dark. So I think there's some benefit to being germinated in the dark up to a point. I now have another experiment which I'll show you in a moment, and I'm maybe treating that a little bit differently. But that's what these look like. And also, let me see if I can get you in real close on the light one. I'm hoping that comes through, but you can actually see the roots. It's actually, since the container is almost clear, you can see the roots and how it's getting a little bit root bound. So while I was questioning whether or not I should actually transplant these, the fact that I can see so many roots, that kind of says to me it's probably about time for me to actually transplant them. I was kind of waiting to get a couple more leaves. A couple of the other bean plants, or one of the other bean plants, has a lot more leaves starting to pop up, which has me really encouraged about that. Of course, this is indoors, and these are bean plants. I need to go back and look. I think this is a bush variety, but if not, I don't know what it's gonna crawl up in terms of a pole. That would be a whole other thing for me to try and figure out. But let's take a look at the other light versus dark. You know, at first I was going to say one thing, and then I just realized as I pulled these together something different. And that was, I kept looking at the dark, and I don't know how well you can see it, but there is a little bit of sprout in the middle. It's red, and I thought that the dark was the only one that had germinated. But as I pulled the two of them together, I realized, okay, the one in the light is taller. And it's even got a little bit of green right at the tip, I think. So I think it's time to pull the dark one out of the dark and let them grow together, because if I let this dark one sit in the dark for too long, it's not going to come up as a healthy plant. And in this case, actually, maybe light did develop faster than dark. So really, light versus dark maybe doesn't matter. If I really wanted to prove it, I'd have to do a third experiment. If you want to see for yourself, just get a couple of small containers, put the same kind of seed, maybe a couple of each seed, just in case you have a seed that's not viable, which will kind of screw up your experiment. But multiple seeds, but then have, however many containers you want. Put something in a cabinet, put something out in the sun, and see which one germinates first. I actually should have given you an update a couple of days ago just to show you that. But I guess technically you could say that this experiment is inconclusive. But I do see that there is some difference between light and dark. It just may be that the difference depends on the particular seed. So if I really wanted to do the experiment right, I'd have to use the same seeds, same locations, same amount of soil, same amount of water. It starts to be truly scientific, starts to get to be a little crazy, but no, not crazy, but it takes a lot of work. But to get a general sort of result, I think the result here is different seeds have different needs, and light versus dark doesn't really matter unless you're always growing the same plant. So anyway, moving on from there, that's what that looks like. Not much else is different, and I'll give you updates as things change through the rest of the week. Good morning, gardening friends. It's now Saturday, and I noticed a couple things about the camera. One, the colors seem a little bit off. Maybe they're more realistic on this camera, where the other one made it more pleasing. I've tried changing the color settings. We'll see if that helps. I've also noticed that somehow the microphone on this particular camera makes it sound like I have more of a lisp than I actually have. So forgive me if I sound like that. Not a whole lot has changed. I have made, well, there's a couple of small things, but basically the plants are continuing to grow. Let me try and show you some of the individual details, and then we'll just wrap up for the week. This one bean plant on the end here has was transplanted probably, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it's continued to grow, which is good. It's developed more leaves right up near the top here, so I'm happy with that. This bean plant in the middle has replaced the one that was in there, which was just wilted over from the point where I transplanted it. It didn't look like it was going to go anywhere, so I finally pulled it. And this is actually the plant from the light versus dark experiment, which is doing nicely. And it's starting to grow some leaves near the top since I transplanted it, which is good. We have a third bean plant, which I've been kind of wondering about if it's going to go anywhere. It's kind of looking, I guess, about like it did almost when I transplanted it, maybe just slightly better. Looks like it's finally getting enough light that the leaves at the top there are going to try and open up. So we'll see what happens with that one. Some of these nasturtium plants are a little hard to show because they get so long and leggy. But let me see if I can't raise that up and get you a shot of the tiny little leaves on the end. I'm not too sure how well these are going to do. I can see parts of it that look like it's not doing well, and other parts that look like they're doing better. I've tried to figure out if there's some way I can kind of rearrange it, but when I put them under the grow lights, they basically just shot straight up. And when I transplanted them, they fell over. So I guess they're not quite getting the light that they want, and I'm going to have to figure out if there's something I can do with that. Meanwhile, I have ended the main experiment with the grow lights, and I've got this here. If you can see, I've got the little leaves again. That's the remaining nasturtium. I'm basically just kind of propping it up on other pots to give it some support and try and get it. See, I can't even get it to do that now. I'm going to have to move it back to a little bit there, just so that it will, well, okay, you couldn't even really see that. Let me pan up for you. I was trying to get it up on the on this pot here so that it would, so the leaves would be up closer to the lights and hopefully be able to gather a little more light and for some more photosynthesis, and I don't know, maybe nasturtium just isn't going to grow here in the kitchen. And that leaves us with the light versus dark experiments, where the this is a Swiss chard that's doing rather nicely. A little spindly. I don't remember if they grow like that or not. I've ended the light versus dark experiment. Everything's in the light now. There was one that I had transplanted. Let me see if I can pan over for you. I had pulled, on this one here, I had pulled one of the two plants out. It doesn't look like the other one's going to do anything, so I can probably just remove that. As far as, actually going back to the Swiss chard, and let me just move that over here. That looks like they pretty much just died, and that was, which one was that? Is that light or dark? That was dark. So it looks like the ones germinated in the light actually survived better. So I'm going to let the Swiss chard grow a little bit more, and then I'll see if I can't transplant that. And I have a couple more seeds I want to go out and buy. I think I've kind of learned enough to start trying to really grow things now. Those that are already transplanted, I'll let them continue to grow or die off depending on what they're going to do. Looks like there's a couple of beans that'll survive. I think I'll have a couple of beans. I'll have some Swiss chard, and I'm looking at a couple of tomato plants that should fit in a small garden and grow indoors. So with that, I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, I looked at the tree, and there's still some water in that, but I'm watching it more closely and trying not to forget it. The other plants over at the window, not doing very well. Not really any more progress on those. So that's pretty much the update from here. I'll continue to watch things next week, and I'll continue to release episodes. This is the Budget Gardener signing off and saying, may your thumb, even if it's indoors, be green.